The net is terrible in Bangladesh. We know that the net has been off for a very long while there. Every time some writing begins, the first thing that goes off is the net. Shamsher M Choudhary, thankfully, is joining us. Let me quickly go across to him till he has that connectivity. He's the former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh. Mr. Choudhary, can I ask you what you make of the current army arrangement in Bangladesh? Will that hold? The army has said, we are going to form an interim government. What will be the shape and size of this interim government? And will the protesters be willing to listen to this interim government? So far, at least according to reports that are coming in from Bangladesh, they aren't.
I think it's a very valid question. I believe that the army, the military has the best of intentions, but now we have a mob situation, and mob situations always tend to go out of control, at least initially. And we hope that this will be controlled sooner than later. I think Sheikh Hasina mishandled, well, not I think, I know for sure that she mishandled the student emotions at the very beginning. And she reacted too little, too late, far too little, far too late. She was being very dismissive about the whole things. And, well, now we all know what the fate is. One report says she's going to London to seek asylum. The other report from India says, sources in India say she's going to Belarus. I don't think that is going to happen. The thing is that it is important for India to engage all sides. The choice is whether you build relationship with a government or with the people of the country. There's 170 million people. And we have a very historical relationship going back to 1971. I am myself a freedom fighter. I was wounded in the war fighting Pakistan. And the present generation of youth, believe me, they don't even know what Pakistan is. I mean, Pakistanis don't understand Pakistan. So how can our people understand Pakistan? And the fact that the military playing a major role in the politics of the country in the long term is not something that Bangladeshis today want. Problem is that today the youth see as the political forces are too combative against each other, dismissive of the other, zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum game. In India, you don't have a zero-sum game. In India, you have credible, the people have trusted your electoral process. Here, the people trust electoral process is now zero. I took part in election myself last time. I know how my election was, how badly my election was rigged. So what happens when in a situation like this, that you go through an interim period. How the interim period shape up is something very difficult to understand. It's important for India to engage the forces that don't keep on jumping to, extremist religious forces. They will not. Jamaat never got more than 3% votes in Bangladesh. They never got more than 3% votes in Bangladesh. They may be well organized. They may have support group. Yes, things have changed. They have grown. But end of the day, Awami League is an old party. It has deep roots in the country. It has to come to the fore without a Sheikh name in the leadership. And that India, I'm sure, realizes that Indian diplomats are very good. Foreign policy. I was in Delhi very recently, only till about last week. I was in Delhi talking to all groups of people, think tanks, society, retired diplomats, and the Indian.
Give me a minute here.
And I told him that you cannot be dismissive to millions of youth.
But is it just the youth? The point is, Sheikh Hasina has said that these are terrorists who are on the streets of Dhaka and elsewhere. These are not just students. Because if these were just students, then we have given them what they wanted. What is the point of still continuing these protests and vandalizing and rioting? But Suhasini Haider, I want to come to you with a question that many people are asking in the newsroom. Did Sheikh Hasina see this coming? Now, this is something that, Maruf seems to be suggesting. But over the last 3-4 months, you've had at least a couple, if not more, visits by Sheikh Hasina to India. Meeting not just the Prime Minister, but the Gandhi family as well. Did she see this coming? Perhaps, possibly.
There is certainly all evidence that they did see the protests of last month as something unprecedented. After all, Sheikh Hasina had won the election in January this year. The fact that from July 1st onwards, the government faced such strong protests, the kind of violence we saw, the kind of deaths we saw, and we still don't really know the extent of how many people were killed in the violent protests, in the crackdown by the police that followed. So there was a sense that things were unprecedented. In fact, even last month, we had heard that the government or Sheikh Hasina's office was in touch with places about possibly needing to leave the country. So Finland, for example, was on the map at that time, and the idea that she might go to Helsinki as well. And then those protests seemed to die down. In the last week, even though, as I think her former press secretary said, even though Hasina agreed to the protesters' original demands on the quota, and the Supreme Court had also, its appellate court, had given a verdict that favored them, Hasina's government tried again to crack down on the protesters, and especially the leaders of those student groups who were then taken into custody and were roughed up. And I think that started the protests again. There's no question that opposition groups, the Jamaat Shibir, are also involved in this violence. Obviously, Bangladesh does have a history of this kind of very, very extreme political violence. And I'm sure that there must have been some understanding that things were getting out of control. I think one of the key factors is also what the role of the army was. Because it seems to be from just eyewitness accounts that the army wasn't as keen on the kind of crackdown that the police and paramilitary were carrying out. And that kind of difference itself always is an indicator of the government. And perhaps one last indicator would have come last night when the MEA put out an advisory. Remember, India has so far really protected the Hasina government and not spoken openly about its concerns about what's happening. Even last month, when they evacuated about 7,000 students, there was very little word about India's own feelings about what was happening inside Bangladesh. They said again and again, this is an internal matter. And yet, to see an advisory that says, in view of the prevailing situation, we advise Indian nationals not to travel to Bangladesh, and those who are there to really be in touch with the High Commission. It meant that there was a sense that things were getting further out of control. But obviously, what happened today doesn't seem to have been well planned, doesn't seem to have been enough time for packing. We understand from people there that Sheikh Hasina had wanted to address her country before she left, was not allowed to do so. There was really very little time given how close the mobs had reached Gana Bhavan.